when you think about the cost to manufacture those wind farms, then you think about the cost to install those wind farms, then you think about the cost to get the energy from those wind farms all the way back on shore. There's an immediate capital cost that doesn't get paid back straight away. Maybe over years and years and years and years and years and years it does. But that's another generation that's reaping the benefits from the cost that you pay today. And so I think what I'm getting at is that people kind of are now in a situation where the cost of energy is so high, the promise of renewables is so high as well, that people are starting to realize, well, hang on, this is not benefiting me. This is benefiting someone else. Hi, Sam Volkering here, co-editor of Southbank Insider. Well, I've been away for a couple of weeks, as you've probably noticed, and thanks to my co-editors for chipping in to fill in my absence. I have been out in sunny Australia, in Sydney to be specific, where it was hot and humid, at least in Sydney it was, and then went to a family wedding about an hour and a half south of Sydney, a little place called Bowral, which is where Sir Donald Bradman was born. If you don't know who the Don is, then you should scrub up on your Australian cricket history. But anyway, I won't delve too much into that side of things. I'll save all the ammunition for that for this upcoming summer and the Australian Ashes tour of England. But yeah, we'll park that one there for now. Nonetheless, I've been in Australia, and when you travel all that way for a relatively short period of time, I was only out there for a week. You spend a bit of time in transit. Now, I've spent quite a bit of time in transit over the years, but that is one of the longer periods that I've had. I took what I like to call the scenic route out there because the more direct routes were annoyingly expensive. Just on principle alone, you could not justify the cost of some of the tickets out there, compared with an extra 5-6 hours in transit for what effectively became a third of the price. These kinds of decisions make themselves. Anyway, so I spent some time at a couple of airports, spent some time at Frankfurt Airport, spent some time at Singapore's Changi, and spent a little bit of time in San Francisco on the way home. Now, I bring this up because, interestingly, this week I read an interesting article on one of the news sites about the CEO of International Airlines Group, IAG, which is a publicly listed company on the London Stock Exchange, which owns several airlines, one of those being British Airways. Not a lot of people, surprisingly, know that British Airways is owned by a larger group, own Vueling and Iberia and Aer Lingus and a couple others. Anyway, so the CEO of IAG came out this week and had a bit of a pop at the British government about their lack of funding and progress towards sustainable aviation fuels. Now, sustainable aviation fuels is something that I have covered previously in Frontier Tech Investor, and something that I think is kind of a slam dunk, really, for the airline industry. Because if you want to talk about industries that are significant contributors to the carbon footprint, global carbon footprint, airlines are by far and away one of the worst. I mean, you only need to go into, I strongly recommend, actually, you go into, there's a website called Flight Radar 24, and it gives you real time every plane, every plane that's in the air at any given time. And it's astonishing how many planes are up in the air at any given moment during the day. You can zoom in and out. You could zoom in. What I would recommend is you zoom in sort of on the UK and just have the UK on the screen and see all the flights popping around the UK. Then zoom out a little bit over the UK and Europe and have a look at all the flights that are crisscrossing across Europe. Now, then you pick up that and you rotate it around and you highlight the map over America and have a look at the volume of flights going around America at any given moment. it blows your mind when you use a tool like that, which, by the way, is really good for tracking aircraft coming in if you're in transit, going out. For example, what I like to do is if I'm waiting for a plane, I can track that plane coming in from a previous destination, based on the tail, uh, whatever, the tail identifiers that they have, and you can see where it's been, your flight, whether it's going to be early or late, where you're going. You can get estimated arrival times. But anyway, it's a really, really cool tool. But what it does do, it gives you really great perspective as to how massive the global aviation industry is. And then when you think about that carbon footprint, it just puts a lot of things into perspective. And it makes you realize that there is no other alternative for that industry but to move towards sustainable aviation fuels. If jet fuel is basically the biggest contributor to their carbon footprint, then they need more efficient fuels, more efficient engines, and they need, as an industry, to be more efficient and cleaner and greener. And so ultimately, it is, as I say, it's really a no-brainer that this is the progress that this industry not only has to take, but will take. And so I found it very interesting that the CEO of IAG, as I said, that owns British Airways, one of the most recognized airline brands in the world, and one of the biggest airline carriers in the world, came out and had a pop at the UK government for simply just not doing it enough to support sustainable aviation fuels. And you can't help but agree with him, because it was part of Boris Johnson's strategy towards, achieving net zero, and a lot of things were promised and spoken of, and very little action has kind of taken place. Now, I don't think that that's going to remain this way forever, because the aviation industry in general is quite a significant contributor to the UK economy, employs a lot of people through various things, as I said, like engine development through something like Rolls-Royce, or whether it be sustainable aviation fuels, or engineering and design. A whole bunch of different different parts of the aviation industry reside here in the UK. But what I really did notice was that when you go to somewhere like Frankfurt Airport, the sustainable aviation fuel is kind of really in your face. It's not this thing that's sort of rarely spoken about or not many people know about. It's everywhere. There's advertising for it. There's big boards that talk about how fuel is some of this sustainable aviation fuel is derived from like chip oil and all this, all these other crazy cool inventive and innovative things are put towards it. And at one point, I got off the plane to go into the terminal to transit onto my next flight. And one of those ones, sometimes you get off the airplane, you have to get on a bus, and the bus takes you through, basically underneath 1,000 different planes and through the maze that is airport runways and tarmac and everything and underneath. And as the bus was going from the plane to the terminal, there were these massive, big white storage containers at Frankfurt Airport that just had SAF on the side of them, sustainable aviation fuels. These big, giant boards talking about how great Frankfurt was and Germany was at really pushing forward progress and innovation towards sustainable aviation fuels. And it kind of was really in your face. And it, as I say, it really made me think, because of the research and work that I've done on looking at sustainable aviation fuels and investment areas around that. It was a real dichotomy between what you see in the UK, which is nothing, and then what you see in somewhere like Germany, which is quite a lot. And we know that Germany is very forward moving with their push into renewables and sustainable energy and all that sort of thing. Now that comes at a cost as well, which I'll get to in a minute. But it was just interesting to see that these are the sort of things that I notice when I'm moving from country to country every now and then. And it's part of you thinks, well, maybe the UK does get left behind, but at the same time, as I said, when you've got the country in a position that it's in now, you've got people like the CEO of IAG coming out and saying, hey, you guys need to do more about this. I think that they probably will pull their finger out and do more around something like that, because of its significance to the UK and the importance of that for that particular industry. Now, as I say, speaking about Germany and the cost of renewables and cost of green energy, it is a known fact that the cost of renewable energy per kilowatt hour is quite high in Germany. And even though that renewable and energy penetration is extremely high, the actual cost of energy there is high as well. And a lot of so I was talking about this with Dr. Gemma Green. I might have mentioned before, I'm not sure, but she's the co-founder of Power Ledger, which is a platform, decentralized energy trading platform built on a blockchain. And we were talking about countries like Germany that had really high penetration, but the cost of energy was still very high when it comes to renewable energies. And she was explaining to me about the reason that a lot of that is because of the cost to get the energy from the source to the actual consumer. And that sort of hit home as you fly from the UK to an airport like Frankfurt, and you see in the middle of the ocean a whole bunch of wind farms. And you can see it very clearly. You look out the window and you look down, and well, even though you might be, tens of thousands of feet in the air, you can still, on a clear day, see the ocean. You see these tiny little, it's like a grid pattern because they're very specifically located in rows and sections and columns and whatnot of these wind farms. And then when you fly past them, you go, geez, they're really in the middle of between the UK and Europe, smack bang in the middle. It's like, so when you think about the cost to manufacture those wind farms, then you think about the cost to install those wind farms, then you think about the cost to get the energy from those wind farms all the way back on shore. There's an immediate capital cost that doesn't get paid back straight away. Maybe over years and years and years and years and years and years it does. But that's another generation that's reaping the benefits from the cost that you pay today. And so I think what I'm getting at is that people kind of are now in a situation where the cost of energy is so high, the promise of renewables is so high as well, that people are starting to realize, well, hang on, this is not benefiting me. This is benefiting someone else, and then someone else after that. It's like why a lot of people don't get solar installed on their houses, because there's no guarantee that they'll actually be in that house when the payback period starts. So effectively, you've installed solar for the benefit of the next person that moves in and buys your house. And then you've got to do that possibly again on the next one. And there's some people go, oh, the altruistic thing is to, you do the right thing. And so that, the next generation after that will reap the benefits and save the world. But that's just not how people work. It's a bit like if you're flying in a plane and there's no pilot and it's a fully automated system, that's not really going to happen. People aren't going to trust that, because when it comes to implementing a technology like that and the failure of that technology results in your death, that's a pretty hard thing to get over. And likewise, when it comes to energy, people aren't going to trust renewable energy if the immediate impact is that they're paying exorbitant prices for their energy. Slightly askew analogy there, but the sort of thing is it's the immediate impact that people care about on their day-to-day living. This is also why Shell and BHP are recording giant profits, because they're the ones that are reaping the immediate rewards of these massive costs of energy that people are paying. And so while I certainly understand and certainly believe that the long-term future of a lot of industry is greener, cleaner, renewable energies like sustainable aviation fuel, the balance of that between the immediate impact on people is very hard to reconcile, that most people are not going to act in the interests of other people, but act in the interests of themselves. And that's going to, in my view, possibly delay some of the implementation of these technologies, but also create an opportunity for the old school ways of generating energy and the more traditional ways that we get cheaper energy on our bills that we pay each month. And so while there's a lot of opportunity around exciting, tech-focused, forward-looking opportunities in the energy sector, and there will always be exciting opportunities in the energy sector based around high-tech industry, it would be rude to ignore the immediate potential of some of these big incumbents, Shell, BHP. Sorry, not BHP, BP. But they even said that, and I've mentioned it before, these big miners that for the resources boom that seems to never end. I think sometimes we get a bit too wrapped up in the potential of future technologies and ignore the thing that is the immediate concerning impact on people right now. And that's that these incumbents that provide us with a lot of the services and a lot of the utilities that we need today and we need cheaper are the ones that actually end up profiting. So that's a long-winded roundabout way of talking about how you can look forward, but you also need to keep one eye on the present. And if you don't balance that view appropriately, you can end up quite askew with your portfolios. So yeah, that's some of my musings and observations of travel over the last week and a bit. These are the things that you notice when you travel on planes. And I suppose I kind of alluded to it before as well about the idea of automation technology in a lot of these industries too. The idea of a pilotless plane that's automated, and you kind of think, well, that's a terrifying prospect to not have a pilot in the plane. And ultimately, that's not going to be a situation I think that we ever see, because while the plane may be fully automated, there will likely be a human failsafe in the cockpit. Now, that might mean less crew, but ultimately it doesn't mean that you're on a plane where there is no one that can steer it if the technology fails. But I think we will see full automation in things like shipping. And again, when you're flying into one country to another, fly into Singapore, and you look out the window, and just off the coast of Singapore, you see hundreds of freight ships, cargo ships, and you think about the immense amount of freight that travels by ship all the time, and the immense amount of freight that travels by road through Europe and through the US. Automation technologies on top of things like sustainable fuels are all aspects of energy, and this push towards cleaner, greener, more efficient energy. They all form a part of it. Fuels, automated systems, more efficient planning and route mapping for ships, planes, for road freight. These are the exciting opportunities that do exist in the market and are there, I think, for the taking. But at the same time, you look at the big companies, even the companies that make the trucks, make the ships, and make the planes. Those are the immediate opportunities as well. And as I say, the big energy providers, BP, Shell, these are the kinds of companies in the immediate short term that you can't ignore either. Anyway, so I have gone on, long enough today. That's all I've got on top of my mind. It's good to be back in a reasonable time zone frame of mind. I'll be back again next week. I might see if I can rope in one of my co-editors to have a bit of a chit-chat about something next week as well. Possibly James Allen. I don't know. It's been a while since I've had a chat with James on camera, so we might pull in James next week and have a bit of a chat about some of the things even that I've just mentioned today. Anyway, if you've got any questions about what I've been speaking about today, or anything that you might like me to talk about or look at or give my view on in the future, please write in, let us know. And I'll be back with you again next Wednesday. Thanks for watching, and bye for now.